Ever feel passionate about too many things and then you slowly feel like it's burning you out? Well, you're not alone. Being a multi-passionate entrepreneur is both exciting and draining all at the same time. You find yourself having so many ideas and then ultimately scattered because you're so excited, but you don't know where to start. And then you start a million things. And then by the time you realize that none of those things are getting done. So in this video, we're going to dive into how to stay focused, remain just as excited, and not burn out in the process. Let's get real for a second. Being multi-passionate is not the problem. Burnout is. We live in this world that really says to us, stay in your lane, pick one thing. And for many of us, that's just not the case. One of our greatest strengths is the fact that we are so passionate and want to help so many people in so many ways by doing so many things. So here's where it gets a little bit dicey. So when we start working on multiple things at the same time, that splits our energy. And when our energy gets split, we start to feel a little tired, a little exhausted. And then we have so many things that are projects, let's say, undone that we leave and we start something else. And then by the time we go back to that first thing, it feels heavy. It feels daunting. It feels like we just can't do it anymore. So the goal isn't to narrow yourself down. The goal is to follow your passions with intentionality. When your passions are connected through your purpose, they start to work together for you. Therefore, you feel less exhausted and your energy ultimately is less scattered. So this next step is a total game changer, is shifting your perception on your multi-passionate projects. And instead of looking at doing them all at once, start shifting the way you look at them as in different seasons. So you can take this as literal as possible too by the actual seasons, like, winter, fall, spring, summer, or different seasons in your entrepreneurial journey. So you can break this down by season, or you can also do things in, say, 90-day increments, if it feels more concrete to you. Either or, the idea is that when you look at it this way, you're not abandoning your other passions. What you're doing is essentially streamlining your passions by focusing on one at a time that's making progress and being able to see it and feel it versus, dividing your attention among, 5, 6, 7, 10 different passion projects of yours. So this is really, really key. And you can look at this even with the ebb and flow of your business. So say summertime tends to be slower business-wise, less clients, less stuff going on. You could maybe look at summertime and chunk it any way that makes sense to you and take that time to be more of, say, a building phase, right? So say you want to create. A slower time in your business could be a beautiful time to take that extra downtime to create, whether that's creating a course, creating resources, creating anything, content, it doesn't matter, but you could use summertime to be dedicated to that or a specific project. And doing the same if you're launching something, say you want to do that in the fall. And then again, you're shifting between seasons, shifting between projects rather than everything all at once. So then you're ultimately rotating through your several different passions intentionally with purpose by really following the anchor in which your purpose is, your why is. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper on this in the next section. So here's the first tip to being a thriving, multi-passionate entrepreneur. It is to find your anchor. And what that means is your bigger why. You really have to delve in and figure out what your why is, like truly, because it ties everything together. So my whiteboard, in my previous video, I mentioned I needed a bigger whiteboard. Then my whiteboard fell down and then now it's bent and I ordered a new one and it's not here yet. So I'm going to pull up my whiteboard here in a second. I might have to readjust to give you a visual about what I mean by this. So like for me, for example, one of the taglines for my consulting company is my anchor, which is rediscovering your why or your purpose and fall in love with your practice again. And what that truly means is helping others rediscover themselves. And that is a whole nother journey and a topic for one of my next videos. But let's just say for me, I have so many different passions and things that I want to do. I'm going to grab my visual. So, had to back up and I'm trying to eliminate the glare on my ring light here. But let's just say this is me. And these are all the things that I want to do. So, I want to teach. I want to coach. I want to speak and share. That's really all the things. But I want to write. I want to create. And that can mean so many things, but I only have so much space on this whiteboard. My next whiteboard is bigger. But what that ultimately means is this. I can does this work better? Can you see that without glare? There we go. So what that ultimately means is I have wanted and have tried to do all of these things at the same time. And I really had to dial in my why, because my why is connected through all of these things that I want to do. And I began writing a few different things, blog posts, which I do that are posted on my website. I also started writing a book, and then I also started brainstorming other ideas for different books that have nothing to do with that book, my main book. And then I started delving down this rabbit hole of speaking opportunities, and I found myself very scattered energetically and otherwise. I was not getting anything done on my to-do list because I was trying to do a little bit of everything. And I really had to dial back and be like, what is my anchor? What is the thing that is going to simplify this so that I am making progress and still fulfilling my purpose and ultimately my why, which is my anchor. And when you do this, this is when everything starts to come together quite effortlessly compared to this previous version of us doing all the things all at once. So if you want to dive in a little bit deeper, I invite you to check out my 4-week mini course, All Starts With You, which delves into this so much deeper through different pillars in my Align framework. Or you can also check out and take my Are You the Bottleneck quiz, which shows you who or what is slowing down you and your progress. So now we're going to talk about systems, and systems for your passions and or your business. It doesn't kill your creativity. In fact, it enhances it because you have a framework to work around. So there's many different ways to go about this. I'm going to bring up my stick figure one more time because I'm going to show you something that I did and then give you a couple other tips. Trying to do this so that there's no glare, but all these things that I wanted to do, right? Teach, coach, speak, write, and create. So one way that I could tackle all of these instead of doing them separately was by way of, well, it ended up being two different ways, but they meld together. Podcasts. So I started my podcast and then my YouTube channel. They go together because they're all the same. However, that's the point I'm trying to make. So instead of talking about me specifically, so instead of going through, and the season that I'm in now is I've put a pin in going directly into speaking engagements and things like that. That's still something that I want to do. However, the way I can still speak, share, teach, and create is literally through my podcast. I don't have to be on a stage to share and speak and teach and ultimately share my story. So that is one way. And that's by way of YouTube and everything else. And obviously these videos. Another way is to have actual systems that help you. So there are so many great systems out there. Like when we think of project management, so there's things like Notion, Asana, things like that help to, especially for the visual people out there, I'm visual, to go in and really plug in and keep track of A, all your ideas, but B, also looking at when and how that's all going to come together, putting timetables on things. When do you want to plan and schedule things out? There's another couple of ways to do this is your work days. I've talked about it in previous videos in a certain way, but actually I think it was my older LinkedIn videos. But needless to say, you can theme your work days. So there could be certain work days that you do certain things, right? So you could have a day where it's full on creation mode. So that's creating content, that's creating social media marketing for your practice, if that is marketing emails, blogs, if you're doing blog, all that stuff where that creative, you could do that. Another thing that you can do is, and I have one, I haven't touched it in a while, but is kind of have what's called like a parking lot. And it is just that, is where you go. And when you have these ideas, you're like, oh my gosh, that'd be really great. Or, oh, I want to do that, but not this very moment. You go and plug that into your parking lot. And that's something that you can always go back and revisit for, whether that's inspirations or if now is a good time compared to 2 months ago that you're like, oh yeah, I had some little ideas. What were they? You can throw ideas, things that you maybe want to circle back to in a few months. But again, you can also do that on those kind of like those project management systems too, but it doesn't matter. I personally prefer the parking lot just because it's just kind of like a running list that I can organize any way that I'd like. I have yet to go back and actually play with Asana. Notion's great too. It doesn't matter. I don't have any affiliation to any of those, but those are some ideas. But really getting some systems in place and then being intentional about seasons or themed work days so that you don't have to tackle everything all at once. Again, be very strategic and mindful about when you are addressing or working on certain projects. The other piece too is, and this actually goes with your calendar too, but when we have structure between all of our projects, it relieves that mental bandwidth because we cannot mentally hold all of these ideas, all of this stuff and still be functional and creative. What this does is it really gives your brain that breathing room to be creative, to do the things and to focus on one thing rather than be scattered across multiple projects or activities or events or whatever it is that you're doing within your business. Or businesses. So really having a way to throw it in a parking lot, throw it in a project management system, throw it in your calendars, like maybe to circle back to later on. All of these things help your brain have some breathing room and keeps you organized. That's key too. Because what happens when we have multiple things and we start to feel energetically scattered is we end up being mentally scattered. Now, there's another lesson that I had to learn the hard way, but it involves rest. And I touched on this a little bit in a different capacity in my previous video. But when it comes to being a multi-passionate entrepreneur, your brain is always on. You're excited, you're thinking, the wheels are always turning. What happens with that is that there's never any rest. Your cup runs dry. In all ways, your body is tired, your brain and your creativity is no longer working at its highest capacity. So you really have to be intentional about rest as well. And that needs to be reflected again in your calendar of intentional rest time, whether that is just like a gentle moving your body, like taking a walk or doing some quiet meditation or guided meditation, whether that is literally taking a nap. I'm not a napper, but if I was, I would. But really creating space of rest. And that doesn't even have to be like a physical rest either, where it could just be like literally you're not doing anything with your brain that involves critical thinking or creation. And you can block off these times in your calendar. Depending if you're theming your work days or what have you, if it's every day that you have this kind of block. But the point is to make sure that that is happening. Because if you are not intentionally resting your brain and your body, going to bed, at a decent time, getting enough sleep, and then all the other things like, hydration and nutrition and all that all plays a part. But in this case, we're talking about rest. If you are one that likes to walk, this was hard for me to do in the beginning, but you take a walk without your phone. I'm notorious for, I love to listen to something when I take walks, and that could be whether it's music, a podcast, whatever, but actually taking a walk with yourself, by yourself, in silence. Another piece that if you're not like a rester, like a napper or anything like that, even just putting your phone on do not disturb. You can do this when you're intentionally resting, and you can also do this when you are intentionally in creation mode, because again, constant distractions, notifications, alerts, all the things, 10,000 tabs open like my computer usually is, all distractions. So you can go on do not disturb when you're resting or in focused creation time with your multiple passions. Just remember that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And I know I've said this before, but it is so true, whether we're just talking about scaling and expanding your thriving practice to having multiple passions and multiple businesses, to all things. You cannot pour from an empty cup because it all starts with you, which is one of my courses. But if you want to figure out a better way to have your calendar reflect this rotation of multiple businesses, multiple ideas, multiple projects, or if you just want to get a better work-life integration, I invite you to also check out my Back to Balance workshop, which I offer every quarter, which not only helps you schedule out every week, but you will also leave with a customized 90-day plan. So let's redefine success. So being multi-passionate doesn't mean that you have to master every single thing or just one thing before you can move on to the next. It's not linear in that sense. What it really is almost like, I think of almost like a oh my gosh, what's that? I can't think of the name of it, but almost like a Venn diagram, but like almost like a spider web. In a sense that everything is interconnected, because like we talked about earlier, is that everything, all your passions, all the things that you wish to do and complete and share and to be and to complete projects, they're all connected to your anchor, to your why. So you don't have to, you can do them, just the idea is not all at once, because you want to do them well, right? So finding strategies and ways to do that through seasons, through themed work days, through, it's still doing all of the things. And what does success look like or mean to you? Does that mean that it has to be 110% on everything all the time at the same time till you're burned out and you just want to rip your hair out? No, I don't think that is what success looks like to you. Success would be completing all the things that you want to do with a smile on your face, feeling not relieved, but feeling empowered, right? You don't want to burn down the house and burn yourself out in the process. That's not going to make you feel good. You're not going to have that same reward and that same level of empowerment if you do it any other way. The key here is still honoring your multifaceted self and all of the things that you love while not burning out in the process. I also have a whole podcast episode on just that, redefining success, which I think you would love. And it would really resonate if this really hits home for you, which I believe is episode 12 on my podcast, The Fear Chronicles, which is false evidence appearing real. So if you ever feel guilty about not fitting into a singular box, don't be. You are multi-talented. You're not meant to fit into a box, and you shouldn't fit into a box. When you anchor your mission and work in seasons and protect your energy, you don't just survive, you thrive. If this video resonated with you, like, subscribe, and share with any other multi-passionate entrepreneur that this would help. And I will see you in my next video.